able to pull from them common questions that a merchant might ask them during, during their pitch or during a demonstration. And I thought that that would be something that would be good for you guys to know, so you know how to answer that. All of these, of course, will be available in the Resource Center. As a matter of fact, the qualifying questions and rebuttals are already there for you. And I will, I'll actually add the common questions that you might be asked by a business owner. I'll make sure to add that as well. So if we talk about, before we get into qualifying questions, just as a reminder, let's really talk about the types of businesses that we serve. And I bring this up because I know that we all really want to schedule as many demonstrations as possible, so we can, obviously volume is certainly key, but there are a few types of businesses that we just don't do well in. And so I thought that it would really help if we go over that today. So if we think about the type of businesses, though, that you really want to go after, we really think about businesses that have a high foot traffic and that are doing volume sales, right? So restaurants, yogurt shops, juice bars. We do wonderful in juice bars. Obviously, smoothie places we're in. We've got a heavy presence in Smoothie Kings, coffee shops. Vapor shops are actually really great to start a conversation with, primarily because it really is such a niche market, but one that really took off very quickly. So a lot of business owners with this vape shops, you'll find that if they did well with their first store, they may actually have multiple locations. So vapor shops are really great. Nail salons, dry cleaners, and convenience stores. Now, all of that probably comes as no surprise to you, but what I really want to focus on is, let's talk about the businesses that we don't serve. And when you think about this, think about businesses that are appointment-based or businesses that have a high price per transaction, right? Their ticket price is pretty high. So medical offices and dental offices, we're just not going to do well in. And the reason for that, you guys, is because of a lot of HIPAA compliance. That's not really they already have a lot of software that speaks directly to the people that they're serving and their specific market. So we just don't do well in them. Fine dining, of course, and then hair salons. So a lot of these types of businesses already have software, and again, they are either appointment based or they have a pretty high price per transaction, and so we're really just not going to be well. So I just really wanted to make sure that I drove that home today, because it is so important when you're really looking to start building your book of business, that this is where you're focusing. All of those businesses that have a lot of people coming in, and they're doing a high volume of sales. I'm going to pause here for just a second, and if there's any questions, and I'm probably going to do this a few times throughout our session today, I'd like for this to be as interactive as possible. So if you guys have any questions, go ahead and type those over to me regarding specifically the types of businesses that we serve. Okay, go ahead and send those over if you have any. Otherwise, I'll move on. So let's talk a little bit about why qualifying a business is so important. So first and foremost, if we're scheduling demonstrations with businesses that really just we would not be a good fit for, obviously it's not going to make you money, and it's certainly not going to make us money, right? We don't give out that $10 bonus for the demonstration unless it's actually completed with a qualified business. So just from a monetary perspective and a success perspective, you really want to make sure that the demonstrations that you're scheduling, or quite honestly, the meetings that you're having with these business owners, that you're really taking that time to really qualify them. So let's talk about why that's important. First of all, it is going to optimize the use of our merchants' time, right? These folks are busy, and if they're just not open to a product, maybe they're not saying no, they're just saying not right now, right? Or maybe we're just not a good fit for them. So it's important to qualify because we want to make sure that we're respecting their time. We also want to make sure that we're helping the buyer define a certain problem that can be solved. Because if we can figure out what that problem is for them, then we really know we've got a basis then for moving forward and actually pitching the product to them in a very specific and tailored way. So helping them to define those problems help us as well. And then it also really helps them to secure an executive, which would be in our world, right? And it would be an influencer or a decision maker, so a manager or an owner of a company. So it really helps them to secure that buy-in for the solution. So it's really important that we qualify and in terms of we're helping the buyer qualify. Now, for us, it's important because it optimizes the use of our time. It's ensuring that you're actually impacting your business and your revenue. It's helping you to expose any sort of rebuttals that could present themselves a little bit later down the line within the opportunity, right? So it really gives us a good indication of things that we can expect as far as rebuttals and objections are concerned, and we can really speak to those early on in the sales process. Of course, it's going to provide clarity for the next steps, and it's always going to eliminate surprises. So really, in terms of having this qualifying question, that's why it's just so important. Now, in terms of what's involved in qualifying a business, we call it discovery. We actually took that from HubSpot. They talk about whenever you have that initial conversation, you really want to set the agenda, and for you guys, the agenda is, really, of course, letting them know why you're calling, which we've been over in past webinars, but also really acting more as a consultant and less of a salesperson, right? So getting to know their business, and that's all part of that discovery call. So during that call or during that initial conversation, we really want to get just a few things pretty specifically. So one, we want to make sure we walk away with a very clear understanding of the merchant's profile. So, and this is easy to do, right? It goes along with that blueprinting that we talked about in our last webinar. So what type of business are they? Are they a restaurant? Are they a vape shop? Are they a smoothie shop? What type of market do they serve? Do they have a lot of foot traffic with after school, maybe teenagers, right? Or are they a sports bar that really has a heavy community surrounding that happy hour on throughout the week, right? Or that sort of thing. So what type of business are they? What type of market are they serving? And then we want to walk away with a clear understanding of what their needs are. And this is important, you guys, because all of this information can be communicated to our inside sales team. So once you schedule a demonstration, you have the ability in your user interface to see who the sales rep is that's been assigned to do that demonstration. And if you guys don't, I will be happy to send out their contact information, specifically their email, because when you schedule that demo, there's nothing wrong with, maybe the next day shooting them over a quick email to say, hey, listen, I talked to Joe last night, and we scheduled a demonstration. I know that you're the one taking over. Here are a few things that he brought up, a few specific needs that he brought up during our conversation that you're really going to want to speak to. So not only have you served yourself, because we know that this business is definitely going to be one that could actually use our system, but you're also helping the inside sales team to close that deal for you, because we've been able to get pretty specific with that. And then also we want to ask them pretty clearly who's going to be involved in the decision making. Now, a lot of times with these mom and pop businesses, you're going to be speaking to, and we hope you are speaking with, an influencer or a decision maker, so that manager or the owner. However, if you're talking to a manager, and I'm sure that many of you out there are nodding your heads yes, if you're talking to a manager, how many times have you heard them say, well, I need to run this by my owner, right? Fine, no problem, but at least we know up front who we're talking to. We know their role in the company. We know whether or not they have decision-making power or whether or not they can influence the decision. And so being able to find out who that decision maker is, and then what their process is, which 9 times out of 10 it's going to be either you're talking to the owner and that is their process, or you're speaking with the manager and the next step is to, in that case, get the owner's buy-in. And it's also really good as well to, if you get far enough along in the conversation, when you're talking about their decision-making process, there's nothing wrong with, if you pique their interest, to ask them, if this was something that you're interested in moving forward with, what makes the most sense for you guys? Is this something that you'd want to do pretty immediately? Those leading questions are always really, really good. So in terms of specific information that we really want to walk away with, during that discovery call, these would be definitely 3 things to really consider and make sure that you're working into that conversation. So let's talk a little bit about some common qualifying questions. Now, these are available in the Resource Center, and I've actually gone through and bolded a few that are pretty powerful, and I would always encourage you to use, but then we also have a few other supplemental ones. And please understand, if you guys will remember, those of you who have joined us for step 3 of the growth track, we talk about the question behind the question. And so these common qualifying questions are really good questions to ask that are just specific to our industry and our product and helping you sell the product. However, the goal is not necessarily to just get an answer for the sake of getting an answer. The goal is that you get an answer that you're then able to build upon, and that you're then able to ask another question that helps to lead you to What problem can we solve? So I thought that what I would do is actually go through some of the ones that are bolded just to talk to you a little bit about why these questions are important. But I do, as I'm going through this, if you guys have any questions yourself about some of the questions that you see up here, let me know. So again, I'm just really going to go today through the bolded ones. So first, we love to ask, what are you currently doing to market to new customers? And how are you tracking those efforts? So I'm going to give you guys a tip. If you can ask a question that causes a business owner or a manager to think about quantifying their answer, that's where you want to go. That's where you want to lead them. And the reason that I say this is because let's look at this question specifically. So what are you doing to currently market to your new customers? That's going to be easy for them to answer. But what's not going to be easy for them to answer is, well, how are you tracking those efforts? It's going to cause them to take a moment and go, well, actually, I'm not. So they really don't have a way to quantify that, right? It's a leading question. Another one of our favorites is, what are your slow times or days? Some of them will say to you, I don't have any slow times or days, and we're busy all the time. Well, that's wonderful. Busy is great. But what if I told you that I could actually, even on your busiest day, I could bring you in more foot traffic? Who's going to say no to that, right? So a good follow-up question, if they say to you, well, we're busy all the time, so you don't need any additional customer increase. That would not interest you at all, right? But probably 9 times out of 10, what you'll actually get is, if they say, what are your slow days, they'll actually give you a day. And they may say, well, Tuesdays are really slow for us, and Thursdays are probably our busiest day. Well, what if I could help you? What if our platform could really help you increase Tuesday's foot traffic to look a lot like Thursdays? Would that be of interest to you, right? So we're in this point, we're actually getting them to be very specific with that. So that's why those types of questions are so good. Do you know for a fact what brings your customers through your door, right? Well, they all know this. That's an easy question, right? They should know if they're a restaurant. People come to my restaurant because they're hungry. But to then follow that up and say, well, have you actually measured how well you're doing in your specific market? That's even deeper. And a lot of times they're going to say, well, no. Well, what if I could give you some insight into how well your advertising is doing? Or what if I could give you some insight into, really the return on investment within a platform that's helping you to increase your customer frequency, right? So again, the question behind the question. I love this one, number 7. I think it's wonderful. In a perfect world, how would you improve your customer frequency and retention? And the reason that this is such a powerful question is because first of all, it puts it in their ballpark. And so they're going to, 9 times out of 10, they're going to answer a question, or they're going to answer with a comment that we already know that we do, and we already know that we speak to, except now it's their idea. Right? It's not something that you pitched to them. It's their idea. So that is actually probably one of my favorites. In a perfect world, how would you improve your customer frequency and retention? And they're going to come back with something creative. And 9 times out of 10, we're going to be able to actually answer that. Tell me about your method for successfully recapturing lapsed customers. What is that percentage? So here again, what we're doing is, we're asking them a question that we know that they can answer, but the second part of that question is requiring them to think about an actual number that they're probably not doing. And so again, we're able to get our foot in the door and provide them with a solution that will give them that number. Have you ever used a loyalty program in the past? I would avoid saying, have you ever used a loyalty software in the past? Last thing that we want to do is for them to think, oh gosh, I'm sure that there's a ton of loyalty software out there. They already know that, but the last thing we want to do is bring attention to that, right? So if you ever used a loyalty program in the past, a lot of them will probably say, yeah, they have. And the yes, we have solution is probably something maybe that they did on a sidewalk, chalkboard, or maybe something that they did on their social media. So if they say, well, yeah, we've done a couple of things, well, you definitely want to follow up with, well, tell me a little bit about that. Tell me a little bit about the types of loyalty that you guys have incorporated. And I'm also really interested to hear, was it successful? And if it was, what did you guys do? Or if it wasn't successful, where do you feel like that you kind of lost your customers? So that's a really great question. What does your social media presence look like? As a reminder, you guys, on the product side, remember we have many URLs that can be put into a text message, right? And then the system is going to track how many clicks have actually gone through that particular mini URL. And so asking them, what does your social media presence look like, not only gives you a good idea very quickly as to how, are they only on Facebook, or are they doing Facebook, Instagram, Twitter? Are they doing, the whole suite of social media? So it gives you a lot of insight, not only into what their true presence is and the scope, but it also shows you, if they do have a heavy presence, it shows you that they probably are really interested in being able to capture those people that are responding to their social media ads. They probably will have a good understanding of why it's important to capture that data, and those are always really, really good conversations to have with people that understand that and that get that. What do you have in place for outbound marketing? A lot of them will probably just be doing coupon books, and remember, that's where our keyword marketing comes in, right? Because we'll generate that number, and they pick out a keyword, and our system's going to track how many times that keyword is sent into that specific number that we've generated. So that's another reason why that one is so important, because to have a good understanding of what they have in place for outbound is going to give you good insight into which features are really going to speak to them the most within our software. What is your open rate? Again, if they do have something in place for outbound marketing, they probably don't know that. So that's another into a solution that our system can provide. And then finally, how do you drive your customers to social media sites? That's where that mini URL comes in again. So we always, in terms of pitching the product, of course, the loyalty program is fantastic, and the autoresponders are great because merchants just have the ability at that point to be able to toggle them on and move forward, forget about it, and the system does all the work for them. But some of these other questions really get pretty specific into digging through the conversation and figuring out where our product actually will be able to fit in. Again, the goal here is that if we can get them to really think about quantifying those results, and again, most are not able to do that, then we're going to have the best opportunity to present that solution to the business. So I am going to pause here again just for a second, see if you guys have any questions, or if there's maybe a question that you've seen so far that you want me to go through with you again. We'll just pause here for a second, let you guys collect your thoughts there. Awesome. So let's move forward then. Talk a little bit about the art of conversation, which again, we always go through in step 3 of our growth track, but this is really where we talk about the question behind the question, which always leads into the expectation that at some point you're going to have to deal with an objection or a rebuttal. And so when you get to that point, when you are asking that question behind the question and then they come up with some sort of objection, you guys will remember we always coach. The first thing you want to do is just be quiet. Just listen for a second. And then, of course, acknowledge. So listening is allowing you to collect your thoughts. It's also, respecting them. Acknowledging it, though, is really giving them some sort of almost empathy, right? That you understand that the concern that they have is definitely a fair one. But then we can start asking more questions and actually redirect them to why that objection is really not anything that they need to be concerned about. And if you guys will remember, in step 3, we talked about as salespeople, we really need to interpret less and really elicit more, right? So we want to make sure that we're not assuming things, that we're not just asking a question just to ask the question, and we're actually asking it because we're having a genuine conversation. We're consulting with this business to figure out how we can actually help them. Our platform is really just the segue to get them there to their goals, to solve that problem. So we don't want to assume and interpret our prospects' answers. We want to make sure that we're really basing that understanding on responses that we're getting from them and those questions behind the questions. And in the meantime, if they are tossing up those rebuttals, that we're listening, that we're acknowledging, and then we're asking further questions to keep them engaged. So let's jump into a few rebuttals that are pretty common. And again, all of these can be found in the Resource Center, but I wanted you to hear me kind of go through those and how our team would answer a lot of these rebuttals. And so the first one is, I'm not interested. Well, I totally get it. Totally understand you're not interested, at least at this point. Curious though, how are you guys currently communicating with your customers? Are you trying to build maybe more of a following on your social networks? So we're listening, we're understanding, and then we're just kind of redirecting, and we're actually redirecting it away from the product itself, and we're directing it more towards a problem that we might be able to solve. I get it. I totally understand you're not interested in, at least at this point, but I'm curious, how are you guys communicating to your current customers? I know you have a weekly special that you had mentioned, so how are you communicating that to your current customers? How are you letting them know, when it's actually being offered? Right, so that's always a really great way, again, pulling information that you've already learned, directing that into your answer, but then asking them more questions. I don't have time. This is probably one that most of you have heard more often than not, and you're going to continue to hear. And the thing is, and I think that you need to practice answering this genuinely, because the fact of the matter is, these small mom and pop businesses, the managers and the owners are on the floor. They are physically working the floor 90% of the time when they're there. And so they really are busy. And I think it's important to say, listen, I get it. I totally understand you're busy. Quite honestly, busy is good. So I'm happy to hear it. Tell you what, I would really love to send over just a quick email. I'll share some details on how we might be able to increase your sales by several $1,000s on a monthly basis if you're open to it. So why don't you, what's the best email? And I'll just go ahead and shoot that over to you, and you can go ahead and get back to working the floor there, right? A lot of times, just because they really are busy, they're going to give you that information. If they don't, then no worries, make a note of it in HubSpot. And then don't be afraid to call them again, because the next time that you call them, I would definitely say, listen, Joe, I know I actually reached out to you a couple weeks ago, and I caught you right in the middle of a major shift. And so I thought I'd give you another call back, see if you might have just a few moments to spend with me today. And if not, no worries. What's the best email for you? And I'll go ahead and send over some information. So there's nothing wrong with calling them back, even if they tell you that they don't have time. But once you get that email, first of all, actually email them. Don't forget. When you hang up, go ahead immediately and draft up that email. Hopefully you've got an email template ready to go. But go ahead and send them over a quick email. The next thing, too, is that you really want to make sure that you ask for a time to follow up with them, right? So just sending over the email really isn't going to get you anywhere. I had a coach tell me one time, you will never sell over email, which is true. So you want to make sure that if you are sending over information, while you have them on the phone, go ahead and say, hey, Joe, I'll get this sent over to you, but I'd love to give you a quick follow-up call after you've had a time to kind of look over this. So when's going to be better for you next week? You have some time, maybe Monday or Tuesday. And if they're still engaged at that point, keep asking. Okay, so would Monday or Tuesday work better for you? Monday, okay, great. How about I give you a call maybe sometime in the morning? It sounds like that about this time would just be too busy anyway. So would you have some time maybe around 8:30, something like that? So you want to make sure that you can get as specific as possible and make sure that you're really asking for that follow-up call. And if they tell you, look, I'll get back to you, then fine, no worries. Then what you actually can do is in your email, that's your call to action, right? Is what's the best email for you, and then the call to action at the very end when you send that information over can be, listen, I'd love to give you a quick follow-up call. Do you have some time to speak with me next week, right? And try to engage them that way. So I've had a really good question that's come in that said, look, do we really want to say thousands of dollars a month? Is that realistic for a mom and pop shop? It is realistic, but I will tell you that if you are speaking to maybe a business that's just started and you know that, or maybe you're speaking to a business that would definitely benefit from our platform, but they have a really, maybe they've got a really it's in a small area, then okay, maybe you don't want to say that. Maybe at that point, what if I could help you increase your sales by a few $1,000s a month, or by a few $100s a week, something like that. So you definitely want to tailor that response. That's a great question. You definitely want to tailor it for the business that you're speaking to. However, keep in mind that it is realistic if we're talking about a business that's using our platform that's in a larger area, and that certainly has more foot traffic than maybe a couple of businesses that you've prospected to earlier that week. But that's a great question, and I hope that helps. You're welcome. So I don't have the money, and in all fairness, with these mom and pop shops, that's fair. A lot of them, it's not really that they probably don't have the money. It's just that they don't have it allotted at that point. Also that they probably don't realize, but our system will help give them insight into the budget that they already have. Our platform will actually give them insight into how well, if they're taking out the keyword marketing as an example, if they're taking out spending all their money on coupons, our system can help them really get a good understanding of how well that those dollars that are going towards those coupons are actually working for them. And so I think that this is a fair rebuttal, and I definitely think that it's one that we should take seriously for sure. And the best response is, look, I get it. Budgets can be tight. The economy is picking back up here, but we get it. We understand. And what if I was able to show you, though, a way to automatically just drive up a few $1,000s in additional revenue a month, or again, depending on the business, maybe a few $100s a week, something like that. And if you don't have time now, or you're not interested right now, then perhaps maybe it can be a conversation that we have at this point, and then we can reconnect when you begin planning next year's budget. It's a little bit more of a soft approach, and it's basically saying, look, if you'll just give me some time now, I can actually show you how our system can make you money. Joe always says, look, if you gave me $249 right now and I could turn around within a month and give you $600, would you do it? Well, who's going to say no to that, right? That is a little bit harder of a sell, but I think it's important to recognize that a lot of them probably do already have their budgets allotted, and maybe see if you can at least start that conversation with them now for something that they can consider a little bit later, because a lot of times what happens is they say that they don't have the money, and then they actually see the product, and it's a totally different story. So if you're recognizing, I get that you don't have the money, you're at least opening them up to asking them to open up to at least have the conversation with you right now. And it's probably going to turn out that money really isn't as big of an issue, because when they see the platform, they realize how much value it can drive. I know you guys love that. If I could give you $249 for $600 in a month, it is a good one. It is a good one. Can you send an email? We've already gone over this kind of with another rebuttal, but yes, absolutely. What's your email, right? Go ahead. Absolutely. I'd be happy to send over a link. And I'll actually include a few case studies from businesses that are similar to yours. I've looked into you guys, and so we actually have been able to help businesses just like you all across the nation. And I've got a few case studies that you'll probably want to take a look at. So sure, what's that email? I'll go ahead and get that sent over to you. And then again, make sure that you're asking for a time to follow up. I mean, if they've said, send me over an email, it's because they may or may not be interested, but we know for sure they want to get you off the phone because they're probably busy. So we'll respect that, but at the same time, they have asked you to engage with them. And so there's nothing wrong with following up and saying, well, let's go ahead and just carve out some time for me to follow up with you. When's a good time? And then make sure in the email that if they have not solidified a time, a follow-up call with you while you're actually on the phone or in person, make sure in the email that you have that call to action, okay? So I'm going to pause here just for a second, and if there are any objections that you guys have gotten that you have not seen today, because these are pretty generic, but if there's any rebuttals or objections that you guys have gotten that you want to send over to me real quick, I will answer them as best I can, and then also make sure to include that in our common rebuttals and objections document. So I'll just wait just a second, you guys. All right. So I promised you that I'd try to wrap up within half an hour, and we are right at that mark. So there's one more slide, and I do think this one's really important, and I'm actually excited about talking through this with you. So if you guys will just bear with me, we'll make it through. Actually, I do have another question that's really great. Merchants will want to know cost, but I like to defer that to the representative. I will tell you, I highly encourage that you really get to know our cost, because the businesses that you're going to be working with are not businesses that we would typically negotiate price with. And the reason I say that is because the only time that we would negotiate price is if we're talking to a merchant who's got 100 locations, right, 150 locations. So for the most part, the people that you'll be speaking with might be owners that have, less than 5 locations. And absolutely, I mean, you certainly can defer that to the sales rep if you'd like, but I think it does really speak to give you more credibility if you are well versed in being able to speak to price. So, and if you have questions on that, let me know. I'm certainly happy to cover that. As a matter of fact, I actually put it here in our slides. We'll go over that in a second. If the merchant asks how long an appointment will take, what should our answer be? That's great. My typical response is about half an hour. But you know, it really does depend. And so whenever you guys schedule the demonstrations, it is for a half an hour session. With that said, I normally would say, look, Joe, it's going to probably take about half an hour. Well, that's what we'll actually put on the calendar. But of course, you know, you'll be working with someone back at our headquarters that has worked with businesses similar in size and scope to you, and they certainly will want to make sure that all of your questions are answered and that you leave with a lot of clarity around our product and the value that it can drive to you. So it'll be half an hour, but you know, if you need to take 45 minutes or so, then absolutely. Okay. All right, so these are some common questions that you guys might actually get from a prospect, and I thought that this would be pretty fun. I actually really enjoyed my time when I was working with our sales reps for this. So I just have the questions up here. I will, though, upload to the Resource Center the answers that you guys would want to kind of take a look over. But I thought that it might be useful if you kind of hear me answer these and what it would sound like from an actual salesperson here. So one question that they ask a lot in the demonstration is, well, can we track the revenue that they spend and that our customers spend? And is the loyalty program based on revenue, not on their visits? And so our answer to that is, look, we really recommend that loyalty is based on the number of times that they walk through your door. Because first of all, we really believe that it should be simple. That process should be very simple for you. And your customers are not thinking, they're not thinking about when they're hitting that check-in, right? Or when they're doing a loyalty program, they're not really thinking about how much money have I spent on this ticket. They're thinking about, it's simpler for them to think about, well, I'm on, check-in 5 of 8, right? So it just really keeps that number or that process very simple for our clients, okay? Is the loyalty program points-based? And again, no, because we believe in simplicity and we think it's really difficult to define what the value of a point is worth. That's actually going to be probably a question that you guys get quite often, so you want to feel comfortable with answering that. And just to go over that again, it's not. We really recommend and believe that loyalty should be based on the number of times, because first of all, it's that they walk in, because it's simple for your customers, and that's actually how they think, okay? Do I have to have the kiosk? The simple answer to that is yes. So I would say just a definite yes and then move on. Can we put in multiple loyalty offers per day of the week? Answer to that would be, there's a lot of options, because our kiosk really is proprietary, so it is customizable. And that'll actually be something that you'll go over in your demonstration. So, and a lot of these questions that you see here, we always encourage that you say this will actually be something that you cover, with our inside team in your demonstration. But we did want to give you at least something to be able to respond. And so for that one, can we put in multiple loyalty offers per day of the week? There are a lot of options, because our kiosks are they're proprietary and customizable, and then you guys can definitely cover that and what that means specifically for your business in your demonstration. This is another good one. Why would I use your product if I'm already using Square? I don't know if many of you out there know Square is a payment processing hardware, and they do actually have the ability to capture information and email, but what they don't have is text alert campaigns, at least in the same way that we do. And so if someone says, well, why would I use your product if I'm already using Square? First of all, I would ask them, are you really using Square for loyalty? Because they're probably not. And then second, to be a little bit more specific, I would actually, say, well, just remind them, listen, text messaging has a 98% open rate. 90% of text messages are opened within the first 3 to 5 minutes. So Square's loyalty program really is just focused on email based. And so that's really where you'd want to take that conversation. We have a loyalty program already in place. Can this work with what we're using now? And your answer to that would be, we can certainly look at options. And this is something that you'll go over during your demonstration. We do actually have some options for integrating with different loyalty programs that they may already have, but it is on an account by account basis. So for you guys, I would never really answer no to that question by any means, because there certainly could be an option, but you would really want to have that be something that that our inside sales team asks. Now, I will say this, for some of you out there that are going to get used to actually doing presentations, if you'd like to get a little bit better about answering that question, let me know. But for the most part, you'll want to defer that to the inside sales rep. Can this integrate with my point of sale system, my POS system? And not directly, no. I wouldn't give them a definitive no, but I would say not directly. But there are options to link a text promotion from our platform and actually have that tracked within the point of sale system. This will be something that you guys will go over in your demonstration. I'll be sure to make sure that the person you work with back at our headquarters is aware that that's something that is of interest to you. Okay. A follow-up question to that would you definitely would want to say, well, how are you using a loyalty program in your point of sale right now? Because a lot of them actually they're probably just asking that question to try to find some sort of objection, when the reality is they're probably not using it at all. They're probably not using any loyalty in their POS system. So, but to answer that question, you would want to say not directly, but there are some options, and you guys can cover that in your demonstration. How can this platform help us get new customers? Is this something that is possible? And yes, it is. I would say, you guys remember our keyword marketing feature actually will enable new customers to sign up through outside marketing efforts, right? So through a coupon or through social media, something like that. And our platform is going to track how many of those customers are being driven through your doors from this outside marketing efforts through our keyword marketing. What's different about this product versus all of the other products that I've seen in the marketplace? That's a fair question. And the first thing that you would want to follow up with is, well, tell me what other platforms you've used or seen. Because, again, a lot of them probably haven't. And if they have, then you'll have a little bit more insight into what's important to that merchant. Because if they have used another software, or they are at least familiar with it, and they divulge that with you, then at that point you really want to ask them, well, why did you decide not to move forward with that product? Or, what did you like about it, right? So that kind of gives you, again, a bit more insight into what their priorities may be. In terms of what makes us different, though, this is a good one, and you always want to focus on the fact that we actually have the highest adoption rates in the industry, because we have that kiosk, right? And so because it takes less than 20 seconds for a customer to enter in their phone number and their first name, so less than 20 seconds for that information to be entered into a database. And it's also simple for them as well. And so our platform out of the entire industry has the highest adoption rate for that very reason. It takes no time at all for the system, for them to enter their information into the system. Okay, so we've really developed it so it remains easy for the custom to stay engaged. Additionally, and all of you already know this, but it is important to make sure we're conveying to all of our merchants that may or may not be evaluating our system. Another thing that makes us different is that we do have dedicated account managers, dedicated client success managers. Their job specifically is to make sure that when a client comes on board with us, that we are making sure that we understand with clarity their market, their business model, that we understand who their customers are, that we get to know their customers' behavior, because that's what's going to help us train them in how to use our system. So those dedicated account managers are huge. If you were to compare our company to like Square, as an example, they're not going to have somebody that's dedicated. They're going to have a number that they can call, and that's that, right? A good question to ask when it comes to that, if they say, oh, well, I do have a dedicated account manager. Oh, well, what's their name? Do you know their name? So those are two things that really make us, pretty different, that you guys would just be able to answer very quickly from other products and other companies out there. I'm going to go back to how much does it cost here in a second, but do I have to give my product or service away? You guys know that with the text alert campaigns, with the with the loyalty program itself, a lot of merchants are concerned that they have to actually give a product away, or that they have to, maybe give a 50% or 75% discount. And the reality is that that's not really, that's they don't have to necessarily. So there are plenty of ways in the system to make sure that they're not necessarily having to give their product away, but they're still able to get their customers to come back in. There are other ways to incentivize. So the best way that you'd want to answer that is to just simply say, our job is to increase the frequency of your customer visits and increase your revenues, not decrease them. So that's why we do have that account manager in place. That's not going to be focused on giving away your business, but we want to make sure that the message that we're sending out to all of your recipients and all of your customers is value added, and that they're able to perceive that value. So before we wrap up, we'll tackle the cost one. How much does it cost? And again, I think it's fine if you want to defer this to the inside sales rep, but I would definitely encourage that you really get comfortable with speaking to this, because price is never a reason why people don't want to move forward with us, but it is always going to be one of the first questions that they ask, and it's a fair question. So keep in mind, we only have 2 subscription types. Standard is $159 per month per location, and it gives them 2,500 credits. And a credit correlates you guys directly to a text message or a picture message. So in the event that maybe they use up all 2,500, then they certainly have the ability to also add additional credits. Over 90%, though, of our customers actually go with our premium subscription. This one is $249 on a monthly basis, or it's $200, basically $199 per month per location. This gives them 7,500 credits. Okay. You guys will also notice there are some differences with some of the additional features here. So autoresponders, those are unlimited in our premium. Same thing with keyword marketing. Same thing with mini URLs. So all of this really has all of the basically unlimited package. Of course, the kiosk fee is going to be a lot less. The only reason typically why a business would go with our standard subscription would be because maybe they're just trying it out in a couple locations before they roll it out to all 10 of their locations. Okay. So again, to be clear, not saying that we don't have people on this, but a lot of them go with our premium just because they get so much more. And then again, they certainly can purchase additional credits. And for many of you, we've had this conversation before, but I want to drive it home. The great thing about being a lead partner and the fact that we manage these accounts for you is because every single year, you guys will remember, our platform is helping these businesses to grow their database by anywhere between 1,500 and 2,500 new customers. So every single year, their database is growing by over 1,500 people, right? And so it's not uncommon for a business at year 3 or year 4 to need more credits on a monthly basis and actually end up spending $200, $300, $400 more a month per account just because they need more credits without you guys ever having to do anything. You don't have to do anything to grow that account, and you're still able to capture 20% on that entire monthly spend. So if you guys have any questions on pricing, though, and how you should be speaking about pricing, let me know. It, of course, is a huge selling point that we don't have contracts. And keep in mind that when you talk about not having contracts, it's also really good to kind of toss in there as well. We really don't believe in contracts. We believe that we should be earning your business every day. And we do genuinely believe that. And so that's really where in the product, that's where those dashboards come into play, because at any given time, they can log in and be able to see how well their business is doing with our platform and what their specific return on investment is as well. All right, folks, that's all I've got for you today, but I do want to open up the floor for questions. I hope that this has given you guys some value and that it's helped specifically with qualifying, the demonstrations that you're scheduling in these businesses, and then of course answering those rebuttals. So I'm going to wait just a minute, open it up to some questions, and then we'll wrap up today. Great question. Where will the recordings be available? I actually have those uploaded. Well, I have one uploaded, I believe, in your resource center. And actually, if it would be helpful, what I may do is just give them their own specific folder, and I'll just name them recorded webinars. And then just be very clear, I'll actually label them the title of the webinar and then maybe even the date as well. So if you guys will give me until about midweek next week, that's where those will be. I did record this session today, so I'll make sure not only to have that uploaded to the Resource Center, but I'll email it out to everybody. Great question. I saw your YouTube videos with Joe. Are there more coming? Actually, we do have a lot of ideas. What I'd like to do is actually not only work directly with Joe, but actually pull in some of our inside sales reps to almost do some mock calls and record those, not just the audio, but video as well, because I think it'll give you guys it's just good to hear. It's good repetitive information. So we do have some ideas, and there will be more coming. Probably the majority of them, though, will start trickling in here in the next month or so, and then, most of them by the end of the year. Please feel free, though. I always tell you guys, if you have anything specific that you'd like to hear or that you need, let me know. But if there's a topic that you specifically would like for us to record, so you have you can kind of listen and practice based on what you see and hear, let me know, and we'll actually do a video on that specifically. It's also on that note as well, it's also really important to me that for any of you that feel like that if there's, specifically with the growth track or any of these special webinars, if there's anything that if you get more out of a certain portion of the webinar than you do another portion, please don't, it's not going to hurt my feelings. Please don't be shy about telling me because the next time that I do a similar webinar, I'll make sure to tweak it. So I want you guys to be able to get as much value out of these sessions as possible. So if you need to hear me do more pitches, or you need to actually, have maybe pull someone in so you can hear conversations, just let me know because that's easy for me to do. So we've got a question coming in about specific to sales volume, and I see where you're going with this. And again, keep in mind that what we're really looking for is high foot traffic with basically a high, not necessarily, they've made $10 million last year. It's really more of how much foot traffic do they have, and how many tickets do they have. And most of the time, those are really easy to pick out. Because those are the businesses that that are going to have the most people coming in and out throughout the day. So I wouldn't so much focus on how much money that they made last year as much as I would how much foot traffic do they have, and do they do a lot of do they really sell a lot of tickets every single day. I hope that helped, because again, it's not that it's not important that they did 1.8 million in this case. That's definitely huge. What that actually tells me is that they probably do have multiple locations as well. So those are you definitely want to pay attention to that, because if they made 1.8 million in one store, again, they more than likely have multiple stores, and so you definitely want to go in and have that conversation. I just wouldn't let it necessarily keep you from going into different types of stores just because of that sales volume, but it certainly will help you prioritize. So I hope that helps. And if they had 3 locations and one of them made 1.8 million, I expect that in a couple of weeks that there will be a demonstration with that babe shop. I'm confident that you'll close it. All right, folks. Well, if there are no additional questions, I will go ahead and sign off for the day. And I so appreciate you guys showing up, on giving up your Friday afternoon with me. Again, please feel free to continue to send me in any additional questions, and then of course any feedback on what I can do in these webinars to really add more value to your business and really help you grow. That is my job. So let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and I'll mute myself, and I won't necessarily end the webinar just in case you guys have any additional questions. And then if no one does, then I'll wrap up here in a couple minutes. I hope you guys have a great weekend.